Hi, everyone. Good morning or afternoon or possibly evening if you're watching this at night. Today we are going to talk about figurative language. And we are going to talk specifically about how adding figurative language to your narrative piece makes your writing more interesting. So, I'd like to really quickly go over what figurative language is. It is and what it is not. So let's start with what it is not. Figurative and literal. Literal means you are taking words for their exact actual meaning. Telling a story and you are telling it exactly as that story happened. And so the words you use are literal words. They mean what you are saying. And figurative language is language that you use words or phrases that don't have normal, everyday, literal meanings. So you might say something like, it was raining cats and dogs, or my mom told me 1,000,000 times to clean my room. Well, the first one's an idiom. It's not really raining cats and dogs, but we know that that means it's raining hard. The second one is a hyperbole. Your mom really did not tell you 1,000,000 times to clean your room. That's a hyperbole. But those little things, similes, metaphors, hyperboles, personification, you know all of those. You've studied those probably in 4th and 5th grade. And now I want you to add a little bit of figurative language to your writing. That is it. And we're going to go over all of them in the Pear Deck. But I do want to say this very quickly. In the last 5 years, people have started using the word literal in their everyday language, but they're not using it correctly. So they'll say things like, oh, I was so mad I literally exploded. Well, if you didn't actually explode, then you literally did not explode. So please don't use the word literally. You could say that hyperbole. You could say, oh, so mad I exploded. And that's a hyperbole, but it's not, don't put that word literal in because it is wrong, literally wrong. All right, so that is it. Today you're going to do a Pear Deck. You're going to have some practice. And then I want you to go to your own writing and add a very small dose of figurative language. Thank you so much. Bye. To Google Classroom, and you're going to grab that link for the Pear Deck. It's a student paste mode. And then I'd like you to pull up your digital notebook, and or if you have a hard copy, take out the hard copy. And on the next page, I want you to write, how do writers use figurative language? And you can see on this digital notebook, the one that you have in Google Classroom, I have all the terms. These were cards that I purchased from, I don't know, a teacher's store. And so for those of you who are keeping a hard copy notebook, I would like you to write these terms in your notebook. You don't have to do it today, but at some point, I would like you to have these figurative language terms. They're just good reminders. I think you know most of them. A hyperbole, that's a gross exaggeration. So, an example would be, I've told you 1,000,000 times, or that's a pretty common one. Idioms, as I've said already, usually have historic reference to them. And so they're a group of words with a meaning that's completely different from their literal meaning, which idioms are really fun, but probably the most confusing for new language learners, like the raining cats and dogs example. Well, if you were just learning how to speak a language and someone told you that it was raining cats and dogs, you would actually have no idea what they were talking about. So idioms are, you just kind of learn some different idioms along the way and find out what their historic reference is. And I have a book of idioms if you are interested in idioms. Similes are comparisons where you're using that like or as. Metaphors are also comparisons, but there are no, it's usually between two unlike things without using like or as. So you might say something like, laughter is music of the soul. Well, personification, I love that word person in that word personification because that really helps you understand that it's giving non-human objects human qualities. So the sun was smiling on us. Say that, and that might be add to your writing. And then onomatopoeia, we talked about in class. And onomatopoeia are the words that sound like the object they refer to. So, the bangs, the bells clanged or jingled, jingle bells. That's what they do. They jingle. That's the word for it. Okay, so those figurative language things most of you will be very familiar with. The one that when you go into your things, say how you're feeling. The one that you may not know is an allusion. Now, allusions are a little more complicated because it's an indirect reference to something, an event, a text, a song. So in this one, you see that allusion says, the trail was the ATV's yellow brick road. Well, when we think of a yellow brick road, that's an allusion to the Wizard of Oz. Let me think. Another common one might be someone tells you they'd like your John Hancock. And what they're alluding to John Hancock, who was obviously the first person to sign the Declaration of Independence, and he signed it rather largely. And that's a signature. So if I say, I want your John Hancock, I want your signature, I'm alluding to that event. Okay, so that is figuratively speaking. Oh, I love that. Now, we're going to do a little bit of practice. And here, make sure in this you put your name and your hour because that is going to help me give you credit for this. This is our formative practice. So if you have an independent reading book, I'd like you to just read it, read it for 5 minutes and see if you can see where the author dropped in some figurative language. And if you don't have your book with you, I attached a little story. You can just click on this link and there's the story and see if you can see where this author, this is a 6th grade writing sample, where this author put in some figurative language. And then right here, you put your answers. And then this is just a little bit more practice. And I want you to write as many sentences as you can to the image is below. So like you could do a simile, you could do a metaphor, you could do a hyperbole. So do you see that one with the mom and the child? You might say, I told you 1,000,000 times not to text while you're at school. Although, boy, she looks very mad with that finger pointing. Anyway, so go ahead and have fun with this. Just pick an image. See if you can do what they did up with that woman on her ATV. And then, obviously, and this is the most important, you're going to go back to your draft. And you want to add 2 to 3 doses, that should say doses, or add a small dose of figurative language. And I did reference this Freddie in the Fridge, so I'm going to show you, that's going to be next. I want to show you what I'm talking about. But get ready to be able to share those when you come back to class. And as always, I'd like you to highlight where you added it. So I'm going to also do this. I'm going to go back to my squirrel story and I'm going to try and add some figurative language. Okay, so this is the Freddie in the Fridge book. And as you can see, there's the little man in the fridge. It's kind of a fun story. But what the author, this was kind of a contrived text. And you can see, I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs. This time, Joe didn't jump backward. He leapt 2 feet into the air. He banged his head against the freezer door and fell to the kitchen floor. The container of cottage cheese did 1 somersault, then another, then a flip. It continued with a half pike, a twist, a turn, another turn, and a third turn. Then plop, the cottage cheese landed upside down on Joe's chest. So right away, we've got a little personification. We've got an onomatopoeia. That's 1 paragraph. You go down to the second paragraph and you see he wore a bright orange top hat and a green jacket and boots as yellow as a ripe bananas. And it's a simile. And this book continued to do that. So every page, every paragraph had some type of figurative language. And the overall effect was a complete disaster because nobody talks like that. Nobody wants to read text like that. So this is my cautionary tale to you as a writer. Make sure you drop in figurative language very gingerly into your paper. You want to be an author who makes deliberate choices and adds to your writing and doesn't destroy it. Okay, thank you, writers.